Welcome back, everybody. Today, I wanted to talk about Ravi, who I do understand is being kind of debated, is a bit controversial in terms of if people think she's good, if she's bad. There are a lot of pros and cons to her and her kit. Let's get into it. First and foremost, let's talk about her stats and her kind of kit. First and foremost, of course, you see her stats. She's got pretty high HP, all things considered, 7.3k HP with 7 or about, I guess, 650-ish defense. Decent attack with just under 1,000, and this has no wasted stat. There's no effectiveness, there's no effect resistance. Let's talk about her skills. She has Devil Drive, which is changed and is now just a stun in addition to an injury after you have 100 fighting spirit, or I believe you can only activate it once you have above a certain amount of fighting spirit. I think it's 90 or 80-ish. I believe it's something like that. In any case, it says that it consumes 100. I'm going to say that it's 100, but I swear you don't need 100 to activate it. Regardless, it is a stun alongside a full injury to the enemy team. It is an AoE. If you have her skill 2, it says that you start the first battle with 60 fighting spirit and you increase attack proportional to the caster's max HP. This was shown to be about 8% or 9% if I'm not mistaken, and it doesn't change, it doesn't increase, which is what it was formerly. But they also added that when you are attacked, you increase your combat readiness by, I think it's 15%. And if you are hit by a debuff, after being, or if you have a debuff on you, a follow-up crit to Ravi will cleanse it, but you can only cleanse one debuff once per turn. Her S1 reads that it is basically just an attack. However, if you are attacking, and this is the same case with her skill 3, any successful attacks, assuming you don't miss, guarantees a crit, which is the big change to her, but we'll get into that in a moment. You still heal on the S1, and her soul burn does a lot of damage. It basically makes this a nuke. But let's talk about the EE and kind of the buffer changes that they had to her. First and foremost, for the EEs, now you have 3 choices. You have, alongside the 14% increase to attack, you have an increased damage dealt by your slaughter, and you also have an increased damage dealt by your devil drive. Additionally, there is an EE that increases your chance to stun on the Devil Drive, which is what I think a lot of people were probably trying to fixate on, just because having an 85% chance to stun sounds a little bit better than a 75. But the big change to Ravi came in the form of her not needing any crit, the change to how much health or how much attack you get based on your health, the fact that she doesn't get any effectiveness now before she does her stun, and formerly she was able to get that. And the other really big thing is that regarding her skill 3, it no longer has any defense penetration, and it also doesn't push back. These are a lot bigger changes than people kind of realize, and although Ravi has been seeing a lot of play in preseason right now, especially against Laya and some health bruiser characters, it is worth noting that not having the defense penetration, not having the pushback is a huge blow to her, although she does have a lot more ridiculous stat now. I've seen people with something like 25 to 26,000 HP, which is great. That being said, as I just mentioned, we were talking about her game plan, and it kind of makes sense as to why people are kind of hesitant to kind of rate her. Right now, a lot of people are picking her into the health scaling bruisers, but she's only got a 2.9, and you're probably wondering why. Well, of course, number one, trying to find specifically counter or destruction gear that doesn't have any crit chance on it feels a little bit difficult. Even gearing a character like Lone Crescent Bellona feels a little bit difficult, same with Gala Lilius, and although you can maybe get away with doing a little bit or a little bit less damage with characters like Gala, or even a character like the Lone Crescent Bellona, when you see Ravi with like 80 effect or 80 additional crit chance or 50 additional crit chance, and she's a character that has to go up against the likes of Laya, who just has to stack HP and then kind of one-shots you, it feels a little bit bad, which is what I would say is one of the major kind of complaints about the character. It's that she's a little bit difficult to build, in addition to, of course, I think the really standout nerf to her S3, which does not do as much as her old S3 does in terms of being an AoE nuke. That being said, the goal right now is to get your S3 off whenever the entire team doesn't have immunities. You can get your S3 or gain access to Devil Drive once you are basically once you counter once, I believe, because you start with 60. And although I don't, oh, there it is. There it is. That's what I was missing. I apologize. Fix A. We'll fix it or add this in later. I'll make a PSA. You do actually reduce the amount of fighting spirit that you consume or need to consume in order to use Devil Drive. And that makes sense because you gain 30 with Slaughter. You start with 60. And of course, then that means that Devil Drive, after one single S1, that's originally what I was thinking, you could S1, or all you needed to do was S1 once with the Ravi, and then you have access to her Devil Drive. This, of course, comes in the form of counters, or if you are a faster Ravi, you can S1, cycle, and then use your S3 after. But that is kind of the general game plan for Ravi. It's get off your S3 as much as you can, pray that you get counters, and if you ever see a character that has anti-crit, like the Navy Captain Landys of the world, boom, just S1 her or use her Soul Burn, which does actually cost 20 souls. It is a little bit, a little bit more costly, but it basically one-shots any Navy Captain that I've ever seen, so long as they aren't hidden behind mitigation or have something crazy, some crazy tank build on her. Okay, that was the game plan, and we already talked about the buff, but let's actually talk about Ravi'S imprints, because, of course, imprints are kind of important in Epic 7, and let's address it. So the elephant in the room is, does the defense percent matter? Do you actually need this imprint concentration? And actually, I would say that for Ravi, this is one of these imprints that feels less valuable. And now let me explain. Of course, with other characters, if you have health percent imprint and you're playing someone like Laia, it's doubly good. You have the additional survivability, you have the damage. But in even other cases, if you have a character like Roy Mustang, Janua, if their imprint was attack percent, for instance, you would argue that though it is nice to get a little bit more damage, it's not quite the same as something like crit chance, which is actually what Janua has, or even something like HP on these other characters because it serves a dual purpose. Now, Ravi feels particularly off and weird because she has defense percent. Now, normally, I would expect someone like Ravi to have something like HP or a self-imprint attack, but her having defense means that she really only has one way that this can go, and it's that she's using the defense percent self-imprint to make her a little bit tankier, which is nice, but you would have preferred it to be on HP, and you would have gotten double value from it being on HP percent. Now, you could also argue that on the imprint route, you also have the imprint release, 10.8% attack or 11% attack to 3 other potential characters, assuming that you have anyone that scales with attack is nice. And if nothing else, about 22% attack to other characters on your team, kind of valuable in a, I guess, long-term, kind of long drawn-out attacks kind of sense. It's 22% attack that you gain that you otherwise would have lost. That's either in chip damage and making sure that you kill with a character like Gala, Spectre Tenebria's damage, etc. So in that sense, while I do think that imprint concentration for her feels a little bit wasted because it's not as dually usable, and you don't necessarily need to have an infinite amount of defense to make her work, I do think that having attack percent could be useful, especially if you're pairing someone like Ravi alongside attack scalers. Long story short, imprints, okay, not that important though. Now for my personal build, I have a Ravi that has about 2.7k attack, 26k HP, 1500 defense with the imprint, 155 speed, 284 crit damage, and I am on counter and penetration set alongside Sigurd's Scythe. Now, I do want to make it clear that these are semi kind of difficult-ish stats to get. I do wish that I was a little bit faster, although I do pretty much want to keep all the same stats. Having HP is nice, and I've seen a couple people on things like Samsara Bead and things of that nature, but I felt that with Sigurd's Scythe, when you're in a pinch and you get countered or you're low, that boost in HP or that boost in lifesteal and healing from the Sigurd's Scythe activating into S1 is very, very clutch. I've seen it myself. However, I do also think that in terms of her playstyle and the way that I think she's going to be very successful, I almost think that you need a little bit more speed, and maybe you could rely a little bit less on the attack scaling to give yourself either more speed or more HP. In all aspects and all regard of my personal build, though, I feel like I haven't been playing her to her max potential, and even for my EE right now, I have the Slaughter increased damage, but she hasn't been as insane as someone like Blood Moon Haste, which is why I think that I may change up my personal build in the future, but this is the one that I have landed on currently. for best sets. I think there are really only 2 sets, or maybe I guess technically 3 sets that you could use on her. The first is counter, because you want to make use of her S1 healing and the damage, which is pretty impactful. You have speed set, which is probably what a lot of you are going to be running to, because that's going to be what you can afford, or that's going to be the build that you can actually make. And then there's the destruction route. Now, the reason why I'm a little bit hesitant on the speed and destruction route is because unless if you're trying to use Ravi as a nuker, which some people do, she feels like one of these characters that you want to kind of slug it out and kind of wait longer and longer into the end game until your S1 start one-shotting, or maybe not one-shotting, but getting Soul Weavers and Knights down to a low enough health that after maybe an overdrive into an S1, boom, they're dead. Alternatively, if we talk about, or I guess on a side note, if we talk about the 2-piece set, penetration set, I think is probably going to be her best in slot, even considering, or especially considering the free cleanse that she gets on her S2. Arguably, if you want to prevent yourself from getting hit by a stray, blind, debuff, whatever, controlled by a Conqueror Lilius S2 when she can only use her S2 and not S3, whatever fairy tale scenario you want to come up with, you could run Ravi on the immunity set. But I do also think that things like health set also kind of provide good value, because you're just getting additional stat. And with Ravi, honestly, she does feel like the character that she needs to be very tanky. And if the entire team hasn't basically died, her doing a devil drive will set up someone else to kind of clean up and kill everything. So that's where I kind of land on the 2-piece, whether that's HP, defense, or even the pen set. I think all of them are fine, alongside immunity, which I think feels a little bit wasted, depending on what you're trying to build. But I like pen set right now. For her artifact, as I mentioned, Sigurd Scythe, I believe Synergies is the best because of how clutch it is, but I do acknowledge that there are plenty of different artifacts you can run. If you want to run something like Sweet Miracle so you have additional cleansing, that's fine. If you want to run something like Pipette Lance so you have a more immediate sense of cleanse, or healing, I should say, and damage, that's fine. Prayer of Solitude, just for additional HP, that's fine. Pretty much any artifact that you put on this character, Merciless Glutton, Draco's Plate, a Sigurd Scythe, Durandal, I mean, pretty much any artifact you can think of, even Proof of Valor, will work on this character. It really comes down to the playstyle that you're looking to kind of accomplish or kind of perform when it comes to this Ravi character, and that's going to be how you decide on the artifact for her. For slower compositions, like I said, I do think that something of a Proof of Valor, Sigurd Scythe, or a Durandal might work out well. But if you're trying to play her a bit more assassin, try something like Golden Rose or even Pipette Lance if you really want that immediate gratification for damage and also want to give yourself kind of a backup. Now, moving along, we have the conversation of whether or not she's good for PvE and PvP. And to be honest with you, although there were definitely days where people would take something like Ravi into a golem hunt, I don't know that a lot of people can afford to go into golem right now, especially just after the, the whole, I guess, Overlord side story event. You gain a lot of value from doing that event, of course, and everyone pretty much blew out their leaves. But Ravi really only works for, I guess, golem hunt, and on occasion, if you are going to use Ravi in certain things like I guess the off chance of a Hall of Trials, on occasion using her in something like the Nightmare Lab, or even sometimes even the Abyss. These are the only real locations that you could use her from. But even in those situations, it's kind of fringe, and there are definitely scenarios or other, I guess, compositions or characters that can replace her, because she does not feel so significant or so much more overpowered as opposed to other fire units. A lot of the times, if you were going to use someone like Fire Ravi, you could get away with either using someone like, I don't know, Lone Crescent Bologna, or maybe even someone like Ed. And that's pretty much why she doesn't work that well in PvE. However, on the conversation of PvP, I do think that she's a character that has a decent amount of play and a decent amount of presence on the ladder right now. I personally have not found her to be played a lot in my matches because I play quite quickly. However, if we just do a very quick hop, skip, and a jump to... Actually, I just realized it's not even updated, so I can't show it. I was going to show you the Match History GG page to kind of explain, but if you ended up watching actually Valky's channel or Valky's tournament, and the weekend tournament that we had, there was a decent amount of Ravi, and I'm sure a lot of you guys are seeing her right now. She is kind of a pest to deal with if you don't have water units to kind of deal with her, but just keep in mind that right now, I think there's a lot of testing going on. There's a lot of tomfoolery and memeing, but outside of that, I think the resurgence of characters like Shu and Arya and Karina have also dialed her or kept her in check a little bit, because those characters do not have any difficulty dealing with the Ravi, I promise you. And in that sense, Ravi, though appearing to be kind of really good, especially in character or especially against characters like Navy Captain Landy, you kind of have to make that conversation or kind of make that judgment call for yourself. Do you want to take Ravi or leave the Navy Captain Landy open so that you can deal with the Laia and the Navy Captain Landy compositions, or do you want to just ban out the Navy Captain Landy and just take Laia for yourself? In my experience and from what I've seen a lot of people actually go for the latter, which is, I don't want to deal with Candy. I don't even want to see her, and I already have Laia. I'm going to play that sort of playstyle and deal with all the other BS that involves RTA. But that is still to say that I have seen people play Ravi, and I've definitely seen a lot of high-level players actually try to make this character work, though it definitely feels a little bit weird when, again, it feels like she lost a bit of her identity with the skill 3 nerf. Moving along, though, we do have the conversation of synergies and counters, and she kind of feels like a character like Lone Crescent Bologna, actually. Martial Artist Ken also comes to mind when I talk about this, and my Lone Crescent Bologna is missing a piece of gear. But if you're familiar with Lone Crescent Bologna or how ML Ken works, both of whom I pick a decent amount if I'm ever trying to test out standard games, you'd actually know that one of her best pairings is going to be a character like Conqueror Lilius. Now, of course, it would be ideal if you could pair a character like Ravi with one of the most broken characters in the game, which is Sea Phantom Politis, but a lot of the times the Sea Phantom Politis character ends up getting banned, pre-banned, whatever, post-banned, etc. On that same kind of vein, though, Fire Ravi is pretty good, actually, against a character like Blood Moon Haste, who, although Blood Moon Haste can one-shot a character like Karina or most other characters that are more defense-based or lower HP, it is really, really, really difficult for Blood Moon Haste to deal with health stackers. And that's why, in a lot of cases, if you ever see Blood Moon Haste right now, you will encounter things like Laia or even the Fire Ravi to try and deal with the haste, because what is the haste going to do if it ends up being a 1v1 against the Ravi? You can't really kill the Ravi, and Ravi doesn't provide herself a buff, so it kind of feels like it's wasted, and you kind of are just building up her Devil Drive, which is very, very counter-productive, especially when you're trying to beat out the Ravi and not have it scale out where she gets infinite damage and she starts doing more damage on her S1. That's not where you want to be. Now, again, if you could also pair Ravi with Knights and things of this nature, you would imagine that to be good, but actually you do want kind of Ravi to be that you have to hit me kind of scenario. And in that sense, I do think that it is quite nice if you either have a dual attacker or if you kind of have some way to drag or bring stealth units alongside you. That's why, in my opinion, I do find the most value out of a character like Sea Phantom Politis, who not only hides herself, but gives herself a duel on S1. Now, again, you do gain a decent amount of fighting spirit from doing that, but outside of her first initial hit with the Ravi, and you are then able to use her skill 3, you do actually have to get 3 more hits with the Ravi in order for you to get a second S3, which is quite painful. So that's why I think if you want to run either a composition where they're forced to hit you so you get to cycle more and you get to S1 more, or if you're going to run something like a dual attack composition or run Ravi kind of faster, that's okay. But just keep in mind, that's kind of the synergy or the idea behind Ravi right now, outside of just being your cleaner upper who gets to one-shot, I don't know, the entire team after you've accidentally given her max fighting spirit. Now, I did touch on it a little bit in terms of her counters, but truly and wholly, just being water does kind of do a lot to this Ravi character. Now, that isn't even talking about how characters like Arya apply blind and how characters like Karina have defense break, both of which kind of punish the Ravi, especially if you aren't critting on the Karina and you get to stick this defense break on the Fire Ravi. But in a lot of cases, I do also think that unbuffabling the Ravi or stunning her, controlling her in any way, even if that's with a character like Para, also does very well against the Fire Ravi. And that is kind of, I guess, the double-edged sword with the Fire Ravi, though she gets kind of activated or gets to perform much better with the C Phantom Politis. She also really despises it when she's slowed, because if you just ignore the Fire Ravi, well, sucks to suck, but you know, the Fire Ravi is not going to get any fighting spirit, and unless if you're fast enough, she's basically a useless character. Now, I would love to show you a bunch of highlights and strengths and weaknesses of the Fire Ravi game, or any recent games, but all I have right now is the YouTube video that I have, which I am bringing up as we speak. I apologize. Now, if you are familiar with the video that I had, a lot of these games were kind of like on Blood Moon Haste's, you know, back or alongside the Blood Moon Haste. As soon as thank you, Pass Connor. As you can see, like, one of the major things that I kind of experienced was fighting against water units, fighting against Alaya, and that's kind of when I wanted to pick the character. But it was, in a lot of cases, actually more of the haste show. And that is somewhat of an issue, in my opinion, when it comes to showcasing a character. My haste here is literally on Symbol of Unity. But Fire Ravi, though she is able to, you know, one-shot or do a lot of damage to the Alaya, as you can see here, she suffers. There was a 20,000 nuke right here. But if it weren't for the fact that I was able to revive, or if it wasn't for the fact that I had the Blood Moon Haste here, I could be in a pickle. Well, I could be in trouble, I guess is the way that you could describe it. In another match, right, you do still have the Fire Ravi, but in this, you know, in this sort of case, what I'm fighting against is things like Fire Charlotte, things that are kind of less common. And although you could argue that it did feel a little bit more realistic, because again, I'm fighting against things like Sharoon, and there's like the Rand and stuff, and this may be the sort of composition that you fight against when you're picking characters like A. Tywin and Ravi. At the same time, it feels like if they ended up taking away some of my staples like the Zeo or the A. Tywin, my Ravi would be in trouble. And that's what I'm trying to kind of highlight when it comes to Ravi. It's that although she has clear weaknesses or clear strengths, it feels like the things that you surround the Ravi with are more important, or extremely important, relative to how you play her, in order to ensure that she doesn't die. You do oftentimes want a way for you to cleanse yourself. You do want a dual attack. You do want something to buffer or a cleanser, whether that's in, you know, a healer or a character that gets to push everyone back so that, you know, you have the ability to use your Ravi S1 or S3. Whatever the case, it feels like she is very dependent on her allies, which is, in my opinion, the sign of a character that needs a little bit of love and a little bit of work, or a lot of dedication to just really wanting to play her. At the end of it all, though, guys, what I will say about Ravi is that although this is kind of a brief overview or a look into how to play her, I do think that the season is young, or the preseason, I should say, even, is young. I do like the way that she kind of feels right now. It feels like there is going to be more of her once the ML Senya comes out, because you're going to want to, you know, start applying maybe more injury. Maybe you'll pick Fire Ravi alongside ML Senya so you can give her an even bigger barrier when you put the ML Senya in the backline. Or when you put the Fire Ravi in the backline, rather. But as it stands right now, feel free to try out this character. I encourage you, especially during the preseason, to do so, because it feels like we need to do a bit more testing. See how good she is, see how good all these characters are. But that's going to be it for this video. Thank you again for watching, guys. If you enjoyed, make sure to like, comment, turn on the notification bell, and subscribe. Hope you guys have been enjoying the content on the second channel. This is my review of Fire Ravi that I wanted to give and bake a little bit more so I could see how good she is, instead of just in a minute one impression. But yeah, thanks again for watching. I'll be posting more content, maybe shorts, other videos, or, you know, things relating to gacha soon. Thank you again for watching and subscribing to this channel. I'll see you on the next one. Good night, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. You know where to find me. Goodbye. Good night. Bye-bye.